So this is it?
Miss Claythorne.
You're Rogers?
Yes.
Will you bring up my luggage in Captain Lombard's?
Very good, miss.
Well, I ought to find Mrs. Owen. The others will be up in a minute.
It would be very rude to leave me here all by myself.
Would it? Oh, well, I wonder where she is. Mrs. Rogers?
Yes, miss?
Where is Mrs. Owen?
Mr. and Mrs. Owen won't be down from London until tomorrow, miss. I thought you knew.
Tomorrow? But...
The rest of the guests are just arriving, miss. Ah, here's one.
I say, wizard place you've got here.
I'm afraid Mrs. Owen has been detained in London and won't be down until tomorrow.
Oh, too bad. I'm Marston. Anthony Marston.
They're at Claythorne.
Wonderful place you have here.
I'm Mrs. Owen's secretary. I'm afraid Mrs. Owen has been detained in London and won't be down until tomorrow.
Ah, well, Davis. Davis is the name. Bit of a stiff climb up here, but whew, what a view! Reminds me of South Africa, this place. That's where I'm from. Finest country in the world.
How do you do?
General MacKenzie, isn't it? I'm afraid Mrs. Owen has been detained in London and won't be down until tomorrow.
Where is Mrs. Owen?
Miss Brent, isn't it? I'm Mrs. Owen's secretary. I'm afraid Mrs. Owens has been detained in London and won't be down until tomorrow.
Indeed, it seems to me most extraordinary that Mrs. Owen should not be here.
Perhaps it was her husband's fault.
She hasn't got a husband. I should like to go to my room.
Of course.
I'm afraid our hosts haven't arrived, sir. My name's Lombard.
I'm Justice Wargrave.
Odd, isn't it? The Owens not turning up.
Tricky what, I say? Wizard place for a holiday, what?
How are you? Davis. Davis is the name.
Mine's Armstrong. Dr. Armstrong.
I've been having a look around the island. It's a wonderful place, isn't it?
Wonderful. I thought, as I was coming across the mainland, what a haven of peace this was.
Oh, look, aren't they sweet? Those 10 glass soldiers. Oh, and then there's that nursery rhyme.
What nursery rhyme?
The 10 little soldier boys. 10 little soldier boys going up to dine. One choked his little self, and then there were 9. 9 little soldier boys sat up very late. One overslept himself, and then there were 8.
8 little soldier boys travelling in Devon. One got left behind, and then there were 7.
Ladies and gentlemen, silence, please. You are charged with these indictments, that you did respectively and at diverse times commit the following. Edward Armstrong, that you did cause the death of Louisa Mary Cleese. William Henry Blore, that you brought about the death of James Stephen Landor. Emily Caroline Brent, that you were responsible for the death of Beatrice Taylor. Vera Elizabeth Claythorne, that you killed Peter Ogilvy Hamilton. Philip Lombard, that you were guilty of the deaths of 21 men. John Gordon MacKenzie, that you sent your wife's lover, Arthur Richmond, to his death. Anthony James Marston, that you were guilty of the murder of John and Lucy Coombs. Thomas Rogers and Ethel Rogers, that you brought about the death of Jennifer Brady. Lawrence John Wargrave, that you were guilty of the murder of Edward Seaton. Prisoners at the bar, have you anything to say in your defence?
She's fainted. She'll be round in a minute.
Who was that speaking? It sounded...
Ladies and gentlemen, silence, please. You are charged with these indictments, that you did respect...
Who put that record on the gramophone? Was it you, Rogers?
Yes, sir. Mr. Owen's orders were to put the record on the gramophone at this time. I didn't know what it was. I thought it was just a piece of music.
Rogers, tell us what you know about Mr. Owen.
I can't say, sir. You see, I've never seen him.
What do you mean, you've never seen him?
We've only been here a week, sir. We were engaged by letter.
There is something very peculiar about this. I received a letter with a signature that was not very easy to read. It purported to be from a woman whom I'd met at a summer resort a few years ago.
I never actually met Mrs. Owen. I wanted a holiday post and applied to a secretarial agency in London. was offered this job and accepted.
Don't actually know the Owens. Got a wire from a pal of mine. Told me to roll up here.
Mr. Owen wrote me about his wife's health. He wanted a report without her being alarmed. He therefore suggested that my visit should be regarded as that of an ordinary guest.
I received a letter from an old friend of mine. She urged me to join her here, and she referred to her host in the vaguest of terms.
Got a letter from this fellow. Thought I must have met him sometime at the club. Mentioned some old cronies who were to be here. Haven't kept the letter, I'm afraid.
Same sort of thing. Invitation mentioning mutual friends. I haven't kept their letter either.
Among the names mentioned by that voice from the gramophone was that of William Henry Blore, but as far as we know, there was no one named Blore among us. The name of Davis was not mentioned.
Cat's out of the bag, it seems.
You are Blore.
Look, you've got me all wrong. I'm ex-CID.
A copper?
I've got my credentials and I can prove it. I run a detective agency in Plymouth. I was put onto this job.
By whom?
Mr. Owen sent me a very nice money order for expenses and said I was to join the house party posing as a guest.
Any reason given?
Said Mrs. Owen had got some very valuable jewels. Mrs. Owen, my foot, I don't believe there's any such person.
Your conclusions are, I think, justified. Whoever it is who has enticed us here, that person has taken the trouble to find out a great deal about us, and out of his knowledge concerning us, he has made certain, definite accusations. I wish to say this. Our unknown friend accuses me of the murder of one Edwin Seaton, who came up before me for trial in the year of 1930. He was charged with the murder of an elderly woman. The jury brought in a verdict of guilty. In passing sentence of death, I fully concurred with this verdict. I did my duty, and nothing more.
You fellow's a madman. Absolute madman. However, I feel I ought to say no truth, whatever in what he said about young Arthur Richmond. Richmond was one of my officers. I sent him on reconnaissance in 1917. He was killed.
I've just been thinking, John and Lucy Coombs. Must have been a couple of kids I ran over near Cambridge. Beastly bad luck.
There was a mention of me and Mrs. Rogers and of Miss Jennifer Brady. There isn't a word of truth in it. Miss Brady was always in poor health. Always, from the time we came to her. There was never a word said against us.
Mr. Blore?
I know. Landor. That was the London and Commercial Bank robbery.
I remember the name, though it didn't come up before me. You were the police officer in charge of the case. Landor was convicted on your evidence, and he died in Dartmoor a year later. You were complimented, I think, on your able handling of the case.
I got my promotion.
What about you, Doctor?
I'm at a loss. The name meant nothing to me. It might be one of my operation cases in hospital. They come too late, so many of these people. Then when the patient dies, it's always the surgeon's fault.
And then it's better to take up nerve cases and give up surgery. Some, of course, give up drink.
You've no right to insinuate such things. I never touch alcohol.
My dear fellow, I never suggested you did.
Miss Claythorne?
I was nursery governess to Peter Hamilton. We were in Cornwall for the summer. He was forbidden to swim out far. One day, when my attention was distracted, he started off. Couldn't get there in time.
Thank you. Miss Brent?
I have nothing to say.
Nothing?
Beatrice Taylor was in my service. She got herself into trouble, as they say. Naturally, I refused to keep her an hour under my roof. I believe she drowned herself. I could not have acted otherwise.
What a law-abiding lot we seem to be, myself excepted.
What do you mean?
Well, I plead guilty. It's perfectly true. I left those men. Matter of self-preservation.
You abandoned your men?
Not quite the act of a proper gentleman, I'm afraid.
I have to say, this whole thing's like a detective novel. Positively thrilling.
At my time of life, I have no desire for thrills.
The legal life's narrowing. I'm all for crime. Here's to it.
Well, I think we...
My God, he's dead.
Dead? Do you mean the fellow just choked and died?
A man doesn't die of a mere choking fit, General MacKenzie. Marston's death isn't what we'd call natural.
Something in the drink?
Yes, cyanide by the look of it.
Oh, it's one of the glass soldiers. Broken.
Ah, Vera, come and have a look at this. Now, these glass soldiers, you remember we found one smashed last night?
Yes.
That ought to leave 9, but look.
There are only 8.
Armstrong, what's the matter?
Mrs. Rogers is dead.
What? How?
Died in her sleep.
What was it? Her heart?
Possibly. She had a bad shock last night.
It was her conscience.
And just what exactly do you mean by that, Miss Brent?
You all heard. She and her husband were accused of murdering their former employer.
And you believe that's true?
Oh, certainly. You all saw her last night. She broke down completely. The shock of having her wickedness brought home was too much for her. She died of fear.
But statues, don't you see? The statues and the rhyme.
What are you talking about?
The 10 little soldier boys. 10 little soldier boys going out to dine. One went and choked himself. Marston choked himself, didn't he? Then 9 little soldier boys sat up very late. One overslept himself. That last part fits Mrs. Rogers rather well, doesn't it?
Well, that's it. I'm going to check the island for this Owen. Nobody's got a revolver by any chance?
I've got one.
Always carry that around with you?
I've been in some tight places, Mr. Blore. I'd like to be prepared.
Right. You coming, Doctor?
Me? Oh, all right.
Did you sleep well, General?
I dreamed, yes, I dreamed of Leslie, my wife, you know. I loved her very much. Arthur Richmond. Leslie liked him. Exactly like the book, the way I found out. She wrote to both of us, and she put the letters in the wrong envelopes. I sent him to his death. It didn't feel like murder at the time. Served him right. That's what I thought. But after, well, you know, don't you?
What do you mean?
You don't seem to understand. I thought you would. I thought you'd be glad, too, that the ending was coming.
What about the others are doing?
We're all going to die, you know.
General.
Don't talk to me that way. You don't understand.
Any luck?
There's nowhere to hide on the island.
Would you like me to bring breakfast through?
Breakfast. Come on, Blore. Let's eat and drink and be merry, for tomorrow we die. Come on, General, can't have this. Breakfast, I say. Good God. One got left behind. There's a knife in MacKenzie's back.
What?
And that's not all. I found one of those glass soldiers by his body, smashed.
But who could have done it? There's only us on the island.
Exactly. There is only one place where a successful murderer could hide and have a chance of getting away with it.
Where?
Here, in this room. Mr. Owen is one of us.
Do you ever dream you're in court, sentencing a man to death?
Ah, yes. Edward Seaton. Particularly cold-blooded murderer. Jury liked him. They were inclined to let him off. But I cooked Seaton's goose.
Cold in here, isn't it?
Rogers has been a long time.
He said he'd gone to get some sticks.
Sticks? Oh my God, sticks!
The next verse.
Is there another one gone? Are there only 6?
There are 5.
Bye.
There's Captain Lombard.
7 little soldier boys chopping up sticks. One chopped himself in half, and then there were 6. 6 little soldier boys playing with a hive. A bumblebee stung one, and then there were 5.
A hypodermic syringe.
Modern bee sting.
One of us did this.
But which one?
let's play a game. What about suspicions? A suspects B, B suspects C, and so on. Let's start with Blore, but we all know who Blore suspects. It's me, isn't it?
You came here with a revolver, now you say you've lost it.
We shall all be dead. He's thinking now he's in here with us.
Poor Louisa Cleese. Was it nerves that made you do her in, Doctor?
No, drink. I was drunk when I operated. My hand shaking all over the place. Gave it up altogether after that.
How does it go? 5 little soldier boys.
Going in for law. One got chancellery.
In chancery? But that means...
Precisely, my dear young lady. That's why I'm not moving from this chair.
That awful rhyme keeps going round and round in my head. I think I'll remember it till I die. Suppose I go in and bring a tin of biscuits.
Good idea. An unopened tin, if you don't mind. Come on.
Wait!
It was horrible.
What was it?
Someone set of strands of seaweed hanging from the door. It went right around my throat.
Armstrong, what is it?
It's Wargrave. He's been shot through the head.
And then there were 4.
Miss Claythorne.
It was all of you. You got me out of the way. You did it all so that you could kill that helpless old man. You're mad! All of you! Oh my God, get me out of here! 4 little soldier boys going out to sea. A red herring swallowed one, and then there were 3.
At least we know who it is, beyond any possible doubt, Blore?
That's right.
I always thought it was Dr. Armstrong.
Yes, my dear, until you went completely batty and suspected us all.
What exactly did you find?
1 shoe sitting on the cliff edge, and 1 glass soldier in pieces next to it. Inference, Dr. Armstrong has gone completely off his onion and committed suicide.
Suppose he really is dead.
I'm a bit suspicious of death without bodies.
How do you think Armstrong got hold of your revolver?
Haven't the slightest idea. Found it in his room, though. I'm keeping it with me from now on.
Where do you think he is?
Lurking somewhere, waiting to have a crack at one of us. Out of interest, Blore, I suppose you did engage in that spot of perjury, didn't you?
Guess it doesn't make much difference now. Landor was innocent, all right. The gang squared me and we put him away. It was a long time ago. What's the next line of the rhyme?
3 little soldier boys walking in the zoo. A big bear hugged one, and then there were 2.
You'll have a job with that one.
Blore, wasn't there a stuffed bear's head above the fireplace?
Oh no, I can't take this. I can't take this anymore. What's that?
Blore.
A boat. A boat.
Blore. Blore. Some kind of booby trap.
It's awful.
Come on. We'll go to the top of the island and wait there for help.
Philip.
What?
What's that?
Looks like a body. It's Armstrong. I suppose now we know where we are.
Now we... What do you mean?
So you did drown that kid after all.
It was an accident.
Why did you do it, Vera? Money, perhaps? Or a man?
His name is Hugo. He was Peter's uncle. Peter died. Hugo would have gotten everything.
And so you killed him?
I didn't. I never would have. If only. Ah! Don't move!
Vera, don't be a fool.
Come any closer and I'll shoot.
Vera!
2 little soldier boys sitting in the sun. 1 got frizzled up, and then there was 1.
We must all answer for our crimes, my dear.
But you're...
Dead. Red paint and a dark room. A ruse perpetuated by myself and Dr. Armstrong, labouring under the pretext that I was trying to catch the murderer. It was inconceivable to him that a man of my standing could kill.
It was you, all the time.
Yes, my dear, it was me.
But why?
Well, you see, my dear, I've always had a very strong sense of justice. I always did what was right by the law. But then I found you. 9 guilty people who had all escaped punishment for their crimes. 9 cases where the law had failed. So I took the law into my own hands. You must pay for your crimes, my dear. For Lombard. One little soldier boy left all alone. She went and hanged herself.
Philip.
And then there were none.